All right, now with all of this stuff going on, it's not looking good for the WNBA right now. I will say it is helping that Unrivaled ratings are absolutely atrocious and embarrassing. But all in all, it seems like a lot of these ladies that the WNBA has helped, because at the end of the day, they have not been making money. The WNBA has been helping these.
It's not hyperbole you just heard. That's a genuine assessment of where the WNBA stands right now. The league that survived on NBA subsidies for 25 years, that Kathy Engelbert literally had to beg players to save during the 2020 bubble, is facing an existential crisis. And the irony, it's happening during what should be their greatest moment of success. Because here's what's actually going on. The WNBA just secured a $2.2 billion media deal with Disney, Amazon Prime, and NBC Universal. Players are flying charter for every single game instead of commercial. Attendance records shattered across the board. Viewership numbers that would have seemed impossible just 2 years ago. But instead of celebrating, we're watching a collective bargaining negotiation collapse in real time. And the players who benefited most from this explosion might be the ones who kill it.
And welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video. Let's get right into things. So we head over to ESPN. It says WNBA CBA negotiations at an impasse. 11 things that got us to this point. Now, within these 11 things, I'm going to give you, in my opinion, the main things that got it to this point where it could be death. Okay? The first one is, okay, the WNBA and WNBPA agreed on a groundbreaking CBA in 2020. Okay, so they agreed on that CBA. That was cool. Now, this was important here.
Let's break down how we got here, because ESPN just published a timeline of 11 critical moments that led to this impasse. And when you see them laid out, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Start with June 2020. The bubble season. Most people don't remember this, but Kathy Engelbert had to personally negotiate with players who wanted full salaries up front, plus hazard pay, or they'd sit out. No bubble season meant no WNBA at all. The league was that close to folding. Engelbert got it done. Players showed up, and the league survived another year. Fast forward to February 2022. The WNBA raises $75 million in capital, bringing in new investors to supercharge business growth and marketing. Sounds great, right? Except here's the catch. They gave up 16% equity to that investor group. Now you've got three ownership factions. 42% WNBA-only owners, 42% NBA owners who also own WNBA teams, and 16% outside investors. That shift in the power balance becomes crucial later.
June 2020, the WNBA announced the bubble season. Now that was during a crazy time in the world. They started the wobble and they played games. And Kathy Engelbert, for y'all that don't know, Kathy Engelbert had to beg these players to play or there would be no more WNBA. A lot of these players wanted all of their money up front plus extra. Kathy Engelbert got that done. A lot of these players was willing to let this league die out in 2020.
October 2023 brings the next domino. New York Liberty owner Joe Tsai gets fined $500,000 for chartering flights for his team. $500,000 for taking care of his players. The league's position chartering gives competitive advantage, violates the collective bargaining agreement, can't allow it. Then in 2023, the Las Vegas Aces owner Mark Davis starts the facility's arms race. He's building world-class training centers, hiring elite coaching staffs, flying his team private on his own dime. He's doing what wealthy owners in every other professional league do, investing in excellence. But in the WNBA's structure, that created tension. Not every owner could or would match that investment level. All of these moments matter, but none of them created the situation we're in right now. For that, you need to understand what happened in April 20.
Teams put this money into these facilities, right? Now the Aces have a really great owner who's willing to spend money on the best coaches, the best facilities. He'll fly in private on his own. He's willing to do things that other owners wasn't. Now, we are about to get to the big part right here. Okay. All right. Not after this. October 2023, new wave of WNBA expansion. So that was the beginning of figuring out, hey, what teams are we going to get into the league? We're bringing in new teams, bringing in new money, yada, yada, yada. This was the biggest part right here. And this, I believe, is one of...
Caitlin Clark gets drafted first overall by the Indiana Fever, and everything changes overnight. The draft coverage averaged 2.45 million viewers. For context, the 2023 WNBA Finals averaged 7,218,000 viewers. The draft more than tripled finals viewership. That's not normal. That's not incremental growth. That's a seismic shift in public attention. And look at what happened immediately after. Within weeks of Clark entering the league, the WNBA announced full-time charter flights for all teams. Something that got an owner fined $500,000 just months earlier suddenly became standard. The league said it was addressing years of player health and safety concerns. But the timing tells you everything. Caitlin Clark arrived. Expectations changed, and the league scrambled to catch up. Her rookie season rewrote the record books. Not just for her personally, but for the entire league. Attendance records shattered in arena after arena. Viewership numbers that seemed impossible became routine. The 2024 WNBA Finals between New York and Minnesota drew the highest ratings in 25 years. Clark wasn't even playing in those games, but her presence in the league all season elevated everything.
If not the biggest thing in why we are at this point is because of this brilliant young lady here, Caitlin Clark. April 2024, Caitlin Clark drafted into WNBA. Spotlight intensifies. Remember that. Spotlight intensifies. Fresh off a record-breaking senior season at Iowa, Clark was drafted #1 in the 2024 draft by the Indiana Fever, bringing one of the biggest names in all of sports onto the WNBA stage. Clark was a hit from the moment she entered the league, with her draft night coverage recording an average of 2.45 million viewers. Draft night coverage. This is the spectacular star power that we have been talking.
But that success came with complications the league wasn't prepared to handle. Kathy Engelbert got destroyed for failing to immediately condemn racist and toxic rhetoric surrounding the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese rivalry. WNBA Executive Director Terry Jackson had to issue a statement saying toxic fandom should never be tolerated, and frankly should have been addressed long ago. The league started calling Clark's fans racist regardless of their actual demographics or behavior. They launched investigations into social media accounts. They created this narrative that Clark's popularity was somehow problematic instead of the miracle they'd been praying for. Meanwhile, Clark herself became the most flagrantly fouled player in the league. Cheap shots, dangerous plays, opponents taking runs at her game after game. And the league's response, tepid at best. They protected the narrative that she needed to be humbled, that she hadn't earned respect yet, that this was just how rookies get welcomed to the WNBA. Then came the media deal. $2.2 billion over 11 years with Disney, Amazon Prime, and NBC Universal. The kind of contract that should set up the league for generational success. And what happened? Players immediately opted out of the existing collective bargaining agreement.
About that this league never had. They never had this level of star. They did not know how to handle it, but you know what they're trying to do? Capitalize off of her. All while calling her fans racist, all while starting fake investigations, all while injuring her nonstop, all while she's the most flagrantly fouled player in the league, all while all of this stuff. This is the biggest reason we are at this point, because I don't believe that without Caitlin Clark, they would have the demands that they have. Period. Weeks later, the league announced it was transitioning to a full-time chartering program. Weeks later, yeah, some teams was flying private on back-to-backs. They was flying private for the finals. Weeks later, after Caitlin Clark
Now here's where it gets complicated, because the players aren't wrong to want more. The question is whether their demands match economic reality. The 2020 CBA was groundbreaking at the time. Revenue sharing kicked in once the league became profitable. Players got increased salaries, better benefits, improved maternity leave. It was structured to grow with the league. But that was before Caitlin Clark. That was before 2.45 million people watched a draft. Before attendance records fell across the board. So players looked at that $2.2 billion media deal and said, we want our cut now. Not when the league becomes profitable. Not gradually, over time. Now, they opted out with 3 years still remaining on the existing agreement. And here's what makes this moment so precarious. Unrivaled launched in January 2025 as a direct competitor. 3-on-3 league, big-name players, trying to position itself as the future of women's basketball. The WNBA saw it as an existential threat, but then Unrivaled's ratings came in. Absolutely abysmal. 3 games in and they're pulling numbers that wouldn't justify a high school broadcast. The competitive threat evaporated.
Campaign, that was big. And the fallout with Kathy Engelbert. You know, the big back and forth between Nafisa Collier and Kathy Engelbert. Nafisa Collier trying to air out dirty laundry from a private conversation. Kathy Engelbert flat out called her a liar. Flat out called her a liar. And we know everything that took place from that. My point is, all of these things have led up. Some things more significant than others. That situation where Kathy Engelbert had to pretty much beg the players to play in the bubble, that was big. The Caitlin Clark arriving to this league was the biggest, because now it's set an expectation for these players and they're making all kind of demands.
Which brings us to the current impasse. And this is where Nafisa Collier's role becomes critical. Collier is president of the Players Union. She's also a co-founder of Unrivaled. That dual role created obvious conflicts. And in negotiations, those conflicts exploded. She had a private conversation with Kathy Engelbert that was supposed to stay confidential. Then Collier went public with her version of that conversation, trying to put pressure on the league. Engelbert responded by flatly calling her a liar, not diplomatically suggesting a misunderstanding. Straight up said Collier was lying about what was discussed. That's where trust breaks down completely. You can't negotiate a collective bargaining agreement when the union president and league commissioner are publicly calling each other liars. You can't find middle ground when both sides are leaking to media and trying to win in the court of public opinion instead of at the bargaining table. And here's what's at stake. The players want guaranteed full revenue sharing immediately. They want salaries that match what they believe their value to be, not what the league's financial structure can currently support. They want to maintain all the benefits from the 2020 CBA while fundamentally restructuring the economic model
that they never would be making without her, all while bashing the very people who are bringing in this money that they want to get. They want to bash them, but they want to capitalize off them. And this ultimately are some of the things that could lead to the potential death of Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. Get down in the comments and let me know
So what happens if they can't reach an agreement? What happens if players decide to strike or if owners lock them out? Here's the brutal reality. Caitlin Clark is bigger than the WNBA now. She could go play overseas and draw massive audiences. She could start her own league with a handful of other genuine stars and probably get it funded. She could retire and play professional golf and still be more famous than 95% of active NBA players. Her options are unlimited. But for everyone else, for the players who spent 25 years building careers in a league that lost money every single season, for the veterans who finally saw their salaries increase and their working conditions improve, for the rookies who entered the league expecting charter flights and professional treatment, they need the WNBA far more than the WNBA needs most of them. And that's the tragic irony here. Caitlin Clark elevated the entire league. She created opportunities and exposure that didn't exist before. She's the reason players can even make these demands with a straight face. But she's also the one player who doesn't need the WNBA to survive. If this league collapses, she'll be fine. The players who resented her success, who took cheap shots, who called her fans racist, who benefited enormously from her presence while refusing to acknowledge it, they're the ones who'll lose everything. Think about the timeline again. June 2020, Kathy Engelbert begging players to save the league. February 2022, raising capital by giving up equity. October 2023, fining an owner for treating his players too well. April 2024, Caitlin Clark arrives and changes everything overnight. Weeks later, charter flights for everyone. Months later, a $2.2 billion media deal. Then immediately, players opt out and make demands that could kill the golden goose. The WNBA survived 25 years of losses because the NBA subsidized it. They survived the pandemic because Engelbert convinced players their long-term interests mattered more than short-term payouts. They survived mediocre attendance and minimal media coverage because true believers kept showing up. But can they survive success? Can they handle having something worth fighting over? Because that's what this really is. For the first time in league history, there's actually significant money on the table. Real revenue, real viewership, real cultural relevance, and instead of figuring out how to build on that foundation, both sides are playing chicken with the future. Players think they have leverage because of the media deal. Owners think they have leverage because Unrivaled flopped and there's nowhere else to go. Both sides think they can win a war of attrition. But here's what they're both missing. The attention Caitlin Clark brought isn't permanent. It's not locked in. Casual fans who started watching because of her will disappear the moment she does. Brands that started investing will pull back if there's labor uncertainty. Networks that bid up the media rights will have opt-out clauses if the product quality declines. This window of opportunity is temporary, and the players who seem most eager to push this to the brink, they're not the ones who built the league. They're not the ones who played through the lean years when nobody cared. They're the ones who showed up right as Caitlin Clark made it cool, benefited from her impact, and now want to burn it down over money that doesn't even exist yet. The $2.2 billion deal is spread over 11 years. It requires the league to actually deliver the product. If there's a work stoppage, if the 2025 season gets canceled, if Caitlin Clark walks away, that money evaporates. So yeah, this could be the death of Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. Not because she'll fail, not because fans will abandon her, but because the league and its players might destroy themselves right as they finally achieved relevance. 25 years of survival, 1 year of success, and potentially one catastrophic negotiation that ends it all. The question isn't whether the players deserve more money. Of course they do. The question is whether they're willing to destroy their own careers to prove a point. Whether they'll sacrifice long-term stability for short-term gain. Whether they understand that leverage only matters if you're willing to use it, and using it might cost them everything. Cathy Engelbert saved this league in 2020 by convincing players their future mattered more than their present frustrations. Someone needs to do that again right now. Because if this negotiation fails, if the 2025 season doesn't happen, if Caitlin Clark decides the WNBA isn't worth the headache anymore, there won't be another chance. The window will close. The attention will move on. And all those players making demands will be right back where they started. Except, this time there won't be an NBA subsidy to fall back on. So get down in the comments and tell me what you think happens here. Do the players back down and take a reasonable deal? Does Caitlin Clark walk away if this drags out? Can the WNBA actually survive success after 25 years of surviving failure? Because right now, it's not looking good, and the clock is ticking.